This week, a new heist action thriller starring Kate Beckinsale and Louis Tan called Wildcat drops on home video. If you like direct-to-video action movies in the vein of like Scott Adkins, that sort of thing, this is one of the stronger ones, and it's worth checking out. The basic plot for the film revolves around a retired special forces operative whose daughter has been kidnapped, so she's kind of pulled back into the game to do a last-minute heist. And it's a fairly familiar sort of setup, but it's told in this grander context of these mob wars are taking place in London that has led to riots. So basically the city is collapsing around them in this context of doing a heist and the aftermath of it. And it just brings this urgency and this extra danger to a fairly familiar sort of setup for one of these movies. Of course, Kate Beckinsale is just fun to see her running around with a machine gun destroying dudes. Likewise, Louis Tan is very good at martial arts and action, but his character in this movie is kind of more sensitive than you're expecting. I watched the movie with my wife, and she's generally speaking not super into action movies. She was kind of more invested in this movie because it just did a little bit more to kind of add to the character work, to make you care about the relationship between Louis Tan's character and Kate Beckinsale, likewise investing you in caring about this kid that has been kidnapped.
Was quite interesting to me that you said you watched it with your wife and she actually really enjoyed it. And I think there's something kind of new. We did really try with this movie to make it, for lack of sounding sexist, like a bit more female friendly, and tried to really make it so that the female audience kind of really got more out of it, out of Kate and out of Lewis and out of the brother relationship and the gang. And
then, like I said, there's just this world building involving the mob wars and stuff that was surprisingly effective. There's kind of a lot of subplots and a lot going on, but it balances it really well where you're able to follow everything that's taking place and everything that's happening. There's even some fairly creative ways that it tackles kind of what's going on. In particular, there's a sequence where someone's recalling a story of how we got here, and it cuts back and forth between this guy sitting on a couch telling the story and him being present in the moment of past events happening. It was just done in a real interesting way. It also has like a dark sense of humor to it that has a bit more levity to it than some of these movies tend to have. I was able to interview the director and Lewis, and they referenced like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels as kind of a point of reference for some of the humor they tried to sprinkle into the movie.
They just running wild with improv and all the time, quick, snappy, quick-witted jokes. And I think that energy together mixed with action is just, I personally love that stuff. I love Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and that type of thing. But then,
now, it's a direct-to-video action movie, so it has the limitations of budget that come with that. Its basic setup is the sort of movie that you've seen before, so if you're not someone that's just into, like, these smaller action movies, it might not have enough to win you over. And I think there are some points where the tone is a little bit uneven because it can be pretty jokey, fun, and funny. And then it also can get really heavy and like, whoa, it went really far with how dramatic this is getting, how tragic this is getting. And maybe it wasn't 100% calibrated quite right in the way that it tackled those different tones. But as someone that really enjoys smaller direct-to-video action movies, I thought that this was one of the stronger ones of the last couple of years. And in fact, I think this year in general has had quite a few above average movies of this category. Scott Adkins' Prisoner of War from a couple months back being another solid example. And the director of this movie is the guy that did Scott Adkins' one-shot movies, which those are essentially action movies that are designed to be in real time, and it plays as if it's just one camera following him throughout the entire film. And so he's someone that's kind of familiar with the genre, knows how to handle action, and knows how to shoot action wide enough to be able to capture what's actually taking place so you can see the choreography.
Just a collaboration of all the filmmakers there and the action team just being like, what do we think would look cool? And I love that. I love that energy.
Every time we were like, right, we're going to do this. And then we kind of looked at each other and we were like, but how can we do more? And then we were like, and then we're like, but how can we do more?
And the studio that we were at in Bulgaria, I was just in Budapest. they had all this stuff there. So we were just like, oh, can we use that? Can we use that? Can we put this up here? Can we blow this up?
When you combine that with Lewis and his skill set, you get some pretty cool action sequences. In particular, one in kind of a warehouse where Lewis is grabbing like the tools, a nail gun, and then doing martial arts stuff, all kind of at the same time.
We flew to Budapest actually just to shoot that area because we had this really badass warehouse. And once we got there, we kind of collaborated on working out, what to do.
He's being a little bit modest because he does care deeply about the action, and he actually flew out the same day as me so that he could have a prep day. And Lewis actually came out for those 2 days, which I'm grateful for, because Lewis's action prowess, he's very knowledgeable.
And so it was able to just merge together quite a few different elements, from the action, comedy, world building, character work, that in the end, I thought worked surprisingly well. It was much better than I was expecting it to be. Another big part of the movie is that Kate Beckinsale's brother, just because of things in their past, is a very broken person that leads to a lot of chaos around him. And a lot of the trouble in the film comes from that, his destructive tendencies. And on the one hand, that's kind of one of the emotional anchors of the film that elevates it, that it is a little bit more character driven. But it goes so far with just how broken he is, it makes him a very irritating and frustrating character, because in every situation, he just makes it so much worse because he's there, that it's just, whenever he's on screen, you're like, what is he going to do this time? And you're supposed to feel that way, but I think it does go so far that it makes for unpleasantness. If you like these kind of movies, I definitely recommend checking it out. I'd say overall, I give this movie a B. It's a 7 out of 10 on the entertainment scale. And it's worth streaming if you're into these kinds of movies. It is a solid action film that makes you care about the characters, makes you laugh a little bit, and you're invested in the journey along the way. So I really dug it as someone that enjoys the category. If you're not someone super into direct-to-video action movies, it's maybe not the one that would win you over. But if you do watch them, it is definitely one to check out.